you fall, watch you lose in control. I'm seeing red, watch you rise, watch you fall. Now I'm about to break, face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this?
What's going on, fight fans? Welcome to another episode of the Fixed Fights podcast with Kurt and Ben. As always, I'm Kurt. I'm here with my main man, Ben. Ben, just coming back from Mexico. How was the trip?
It was good, man. Chill, very relaxing. Saw some sun. Saw as much of the ocean as I'd care to. I like going to the ocean. We might disagree here since you're from the coast. Going into the ocean is not one of my most favorite things. Like big sea creatures scare me. But we saw some dolphins just from the beach. That's cool. But I don't even want to swim with fucking dolphins. Like getting into the ocean is not something I do a lot of. But it was too cold to swim anyway, so it was good. It was a good trip. Some sun, some surf, etc.
Nice, man. Well, it's good to have you back.
Yeah.
Glad you enjoyed the trip. Yeah, I do differ from you a little bit. I do love the ocean. I love the beach. Yeah, big sea creatures, definitely scary.
Yeah. I think big, like over 20 pounds is big to me. So legit, I would be terrified to swim with fucking dolphins because those things could kill you if they wanted to.
Yeah, they probably could. I think they're kind of friendly though. I saw dolphins once.
That's
in
what
Florida,
everybody says.
It was pretty cool.
Everybody says they're pretty friendly, but whatever. We all have our thing.
Sure, they could bite, right? I think they got teeth
Yeah.
and shit. So, all right. Anyways, let's get down to the fights. There is a lot to talk about. None bigger than Bellator. And I got to say, before we even talk about the event and obviously the biggest fight of the night, I got to say, man, Bellator, I think, hit this one out of the ballpark. Say what you will about Bellator. I think their product has, for the most part, been very, very good lately. You know, they had that run of really stellar cards. This card was honestly stellar. They went up against the UFC this weekend. Obviously, not the UFC's biggest card. But even then, Bellator had arguably what we think might have been the biggest fight in Bellator history. And there was some things that could have happened. Like, let's say it was a boring decision or some sort of, I don't know, like nut shot finish, right? But I think just top to bottom, especially with this main event, I think Bellator really knocked it out of the park, and I think we have to commend them on the event they put on this weekend.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point that they've been better lately, and I think lately in terms of like the last year or two, because it wasn't that long ago that we kind of thought of Bellator as just like the, not freak fights necessarily, but they were doing the Rampage versus Fedor fights, right? They were doing, just old veterans with shreds of name value attached to them. And they were, right? They did the Tito Ortiz pay-per-view, right? Didn't Tito fight in a pay-per-view for Bellator?
Yes.
That was not obviously the best time for that. Like they were doing what they needed to do to make cash at the time. But now we talk about it like every time Bellator puts on an event that they're now putting cards top to bottom with like relevant, compelling fights. Not that I'm ever against a heavyweight Rampage fighting or Tito Ortiz fighting, anything like that. Like those guys, if they want to fight, it's always interesting to me to some degree. But here we're actually like you said, going head to head with the UFC with, I think, in terms of in-cage action, a better product this week. Like the ratings tell a different story, but a big part of that has to do with the fact that Bellator is just on Showtime. But yeah, I think in terms of the actual product, Bellator's card was like pretty great top to bottom.
I think even on like the casual level and even, online in between, I feel like a lot more people this weekend were talking about Bellator and about this fight. And again, the ending was just phenomenal, whether it was Patricia Pitbull that was finished or if AJ Mckee had gotten finished. I just think it was a slam dunk for Bellator. The interest was there. Yeah, the numbers might not have said, but like you said, they're on Showtime. But man, got to commend them on this one. They did a really, really good job.
Yeah, I think I think two things you can take away from kind of the UFC versus Bellator thing here. One is like there's a clear number one, right? This was like we've been talking about. This is one of the best fights, if not the best fight Bellator has ever put on. Just had hardcore fans clamoring like crazy. But it's still like they still can not really compete with the UFC in terms of viewership, in terms of like what most people are talking about. But two, I think with that in mind, I think the second point to take away from this is that this was like a step forward, because I do feel like this is the first time. Shout out to occasional podcast listener, my buddy Derrick, who is since high school has been a pretty hardcore, like every UFC, doesn't miss a show, that kind of stuff, like knows everything about the UFC. I would consider him a hardcore MMA fan, but he told me after this weekend, this was the first time I've ever heard of AJ Mckee. So at some level, it's like, well, shit, Bellator isn't doing anything good, right? Because they can't even get on this guy's radar. But the positive takeaway is like, this is one incremental step forward for them. Whereas the fans who only ever watch the UFC, that's the only MMA they consume. This guy, AJ Mckee, is now on their radar. And guess what? Like, if they have access to Showtime, or if they, have the internet, he's more likely to see AJ Mckee, fight the next time he competes. So I do think there's positive and a negative. Like, the negative is like, for sure, the UFC far and away the number one promotion in North America. But two, like, this is an important step forward for Bellator. They have a homegrown star that more casual fans like probably want to see fight again.
Yeah, and and I think he only adds to, Patricio Pitbull, who, yeah, he lost, but again, he's a guy that most fans know about. They know how badass he is, and now look, AJ Mckee goes out there and starts this man. So yeah, I think they have some stars in their hands. Obviously, they're never going to surpass the UFC, but healthy competition is very good, and I think Bellator is right there. Man, AJ Mckee, can't say enough about him. I could see AJ Mckee win, and honestly, going, I want to say day of the fight, I was kind of starting to lean a little bit towards AJ Mckee. The crazy thing is, and I said it before the fight, like, I just love how confident he is. And it seems like every time the moment gets bigger for AJ Mckee, he shines brighter. And that's not always the case with these young stars. They usually take a lump on the way up, but AJ Mckee is now 18-0. He's the Bellator Featherweight champion. He just knocked out Patricio Pitbull in just under 2 minutes? Or actually, he didn't knock him out. He almost knocks him out, tries to walk off, and then finishes him with a standing guillotine. I mean, dude, AJ Mckee is the fucking truth, man.
Yeah, and I think there's a future at 155 for him, for sure. That's kind of a weaker division for Bellator, but part of the reason, I was on Pitbull basically the whole time. I thought he was going to win this fight. Not super confident in that, but when you see them facing off, especially in the cage, you realize just how fucking big Mckee is for 45. As long as he can make this division, his like size and athleticism, and obviously like technical ability, but his size and athleticism is like really something that people are going to struggle with, because he comes out, I want to say guns blazing, but he didn't do that here. It's kind of like gets to your point that this was a massive moment. And part of me kind of thought, we see AJ Mckee come out like wild aggressive right from the jump. And I thought, that's not a good idea against Pitbull. He didn't do that here. He came out like ready to finish the fight for sure, obviously. But the first minute or so was just them kind of feeling each other out. Like nothing was reckless about his performance here. I'm kind of all over the place because there's so much to talk about here. With
so much to talk about. So many questions.
His athleticism, his submission ability, his finishing ability. And I'm not somebody who places a high emphasis on how fights are won. Like, I think George St. Pierre is my GOAT, right? And he's known for these decisions. But the fact that Mckee is finishing guys so quickly just makes him all the more exciting to see fight like basically anybody at 45 or 55.
Okay, before we talk about, I just want to ask you this. I have a ton of questions, tons of things you have to answer, but what did you think about the actual finish? Did you have a problem with it? Did you disagree with it?
It looked wonky because the ref was it I can't remember. It was Mike Beltran.
Yeah, it was Beltran, who never really
Held him
gets,
up.
many complaints against him.
Other than his mustache. Or that's not a complaint, but that's all people know about him.
I
But
think it's wild.
I mean, I think Pitbull was out. Like, let's say McKee holds that for literally 1 second longer, then I don't think Beltran is able to even hold up Pitbull. I think he was out. Like, it's just that if he had let go, like John Jones against Lyoto Machida, I think Pitbull crumbles there. So I think it's not. I think it was a fine stoppage. It was weird that he didn't like check his hand, but it was pretty clear that Pitbull had gone limp at that point.
Yeah, I think he was definitely going out. Again, like you said, he wasn't fighting the hands at that point. If AJ Mckee holds another 2-3 seconds longer, yeah, you're gonna have a John Jones Lyoto Machida thing on your hands. So you can't really complain about it too much. Definitely looked a little bit wonky real time, but on rewatch, I had no problem with it. I think here is the biggest question. AJ Mckee beats Patricio Pitbull, obviously, in impressive fashion, but through 18 fights, like I'm wondering what AJ McKee's ceiling is, because like you said, he's wild, he's aggressive, he's a finisher, but we really haven't seen him tested that much. He's passed every test with such flying colors. Like, I don't know really what his ceiling is, and I don't know if this fight even answered the questions I have of him. Did it answer the questions for you?
Not really. I mean, it I think for me, it solidified him. It answered the question is like, is this guy like super, super legit? Because you never entirely know. I mean, yeah, he beat Caldwell and Campos, good guys. Caldwell especially, right? He beat a former champion, but the way that happened with a quick submission, you're still like, is this legit? It answered the question is like, for sure, I can say AJ McKee is 100% a championship level fighter. Like, he is a champion. It still is like, makes you wonder like what happens if shit gets hairy in the third round and he still has to fight for rounds 4 and 5. But that's a credit to him. He didn't let it get to even the second minute of this fight, right? He didn't let things get hairy. He didn't let things get hairy against Darion Caldwell or Derrick Campos. So like it further solidifies AJ McKee as like one of the best finishers in all of MMA, I think. Still some questions about his ability to deal with adversity or longer 5-round fights. But hey, you can't like take that away from him because he's finishing fights so fucking quickly. I mean, look at he hasn't fought more than 2 minutes total in a fight since you have to go back his past 4 fights were all sub 2-minute finishes. And one of those is an 8-second knockout. So it's a shame that more people don't know about him. I'm happy more people are learning about him. But just that stat alone, here's a featherweight world champion who is finishing fights in under 2 minutes. Like, how can you not want to see that?
I think he is firmly in the top 5 of featherweights in the world, without a doubt. I think you could even make the case for top 3. I think now would I pick him against an Alexander Volkanovski or a Max Holloway? I don't know, but dude, do I think he can go with those guys? Abso-freaking-lutely. So I think here is probably the biggest question of the whole weekend. And I think you could package this into a couple different things, right? A, where does Bellator go with AJ McKee next? And B, does Bellator even have the means to keep this guy long-term? He's 26 years old, but if you look at the divisions, outside of Patricio Pitbull in a rematch, I don't know how much there is left for AJ McKee.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was already. I didn't listen to the interview, so I could be talking out my ass. But I saw an interview headline essentially that he was already saying like Bellator needs to make it worth my while. Like, they got to pay me what's right. I know them being owned by Viacom, right? There are deep pockets there. I think they do have, and they would be wise to basically like put all their chips into him. Here they have a homegrown star who, again, we can't sing his praises enough, like super exciting. I think Bellator can afford him. Like, let me put it this way. He would become a bigger star if he went to the UFC for sure. But there's no reason for me to think that the UFC would be willing to pay him more than Bellator would. I think. Maybe. I mean, maybe the pay-per-view points if he thinks he can really reel it in that way. But the UFC doesn't like. We're not talking about Michael Chandler, a guy who had been around in Bellator for a long time and was a big star, but not a mega star. I think Bellator is really, really going to try to hold on to AJ Mckee here.
Can I interject for 1 second?
Yeah.
Did you see Dana White's comments on AJ Mckee?
Yeah.
Generally, Dana White is very. I mean, when he was asked about Patricio Pitbull, he basically said, "Who's Patricio Pitbull?" Obviously, he knows who he is, but he tries to downplay. With AJ Mckee, he was very complimentary of him, and he said, "When his contract arises, or when that time comes, we're going to talk." So, I got to think he's already on their radar. So again, next question: who is next for AJ Mckee? And I mean, what did they do with him?
I think all the rumors, all the talk is that he's just going to rematch with Pitbull for the 155-pound strap. I'm not super jacked about that necessarily. It would kind of feel like it's letting some steam out of the balloon, rather, like if you do that. But kind of the point that you're circling around is like, that is still maybe the biggest fight for him, because what do you do next with him to like make it feel big again? It's hard. If you look at featherweight, I think Mads Burnell, who we'll talk about shortly, is a great fight, but like nobody knows who Mads Burnell is. You could do the winner between Adam Boric and JJ Wilson. I think that would make a ton of sense, but again, nobody knows who that is. I think what Bellator is going to do is just have him fight a rematch at 155 for the 55-pound strap. And then if he beats Pitbull, then the UFC has, or the UFC, Bellator then has their own double weight champion who happens to be a 45 and 55-pound champion, similar to one other MMA megastar.
I think I agree with all that you're saying. I think that the most interesting name is got to be Aaron Pico. Again, Aaron Pico has looked really good in his last couple fights. Aaron Pico was touted as probably the greatest prospect ever. Aaron Pico is probably another 2 or 3 wins away, but you know, if AJ Mckee goes out there and beats Pitbull again, it starches him for the 55-pound title. It's like then the names get very short. Yes, Mads Burnell, very impressive this weekend, but no name. Emmanuel Sanchez lost. That could have been an interesting fight. He's already starts Darian Caldwell. It's just I wonder if there's enough names to get him going, or if he's going to want to test the water in a couple fights when his contract opens up. I guess the biggest thing for AJ Mckee right now is he's got so much of the ball in his court right now after this. I mean, in my opinion, the guy's a superstar, right? Maybe he's not like broken through on the worldwide level, but man, this guy has star just written all over him.
Yeah, and it all comes down to his out of the cage persona and talking is, I think, improving. Not that he's bad. He's an entertaining guy and he speaks confidently, which I like, but is all circles around what he does in the fight, which is not just win, but like wins in spectacular ways. I'm all about it. The Aaron Pico is not somebody. You're right that Aaron Pico is at least 1 or 2 fights away, but I would get pretty pumped for that.
I think most people would, honestly.
Just given Pico's skill set, even though that record is not pretty, but it's because Bellator brought him along, fighting a guy who was 8-2 in his very first pro MMA fight.
Right, but yeah, you look at the difference of a AJ Mckee, who was brought up probably the right way to get to this point, whereas Aaron Pico is fighting guys with 17 pro fights in his pro debut. You know what I'm saying? Again, that one is probably 2 or 3 fights away, but could be interesting if we do get there. But man, AJ Mckee, absolute star. If you're not on the train, get there.
And what cooler venue than the Forum for him? I was happy that they had a crowd, because it sounds like this is a small window where we're going to get a crowd and then probably go back to no crowd. But they did it right, with no disrespect, not putting him in the Mohegan Sun, like putting him in front of an LA crowd was pretty fucking awesome. That crowd seemed bananas. Reminded me of, like, I was in the building when Anthony Pettis won the lightweight title in Milwaukee. Nice. Similar type of, like, very clearly a hometown guy, repping the hometown. I thought that fight, or I thought the crowd in this AJ Mckee fight seemed bonkers. I hope they put him in the forum is like one of the like 5 places they go. So put every fight of his in the forum.
Absolutely. We spoke about Mads Burnell gets a win over Emmanuel Sanchez in the co-main event. That is 7 straight for Mads Burnell. He could be an option for AJ Mckee, maybe not next, but in another fight. Maybe they put him in there with, I don't know, some name-ish guy.
I mean, if you look, I'm looking at Bellator's rankings now. At featherweight, I mean, they could do Pico. If
Pico would be an interesting one.
That would be interesting, yeah. I mean, Daniel Weichel, Pedro Carvalho, Justin Gonzalez, Jeremy. I mean, any of those. I just don't. It's disappointing because I think Mads Burnell is very, very, very good, and this fight against Manny Sanchez proved that. But he's just so the name. He's just so unrecognizable, which is unfortunate because he's really, really good at fighting.
He is very good at fighting. Man, the Dagestani takeover in Bellator, dude. We talk about it all the time. Bellator is doing such a good job tapping into that region of fighters. Usman Nurmagomedov just dominates Manny Muro, gets him out of there in the first. Kassan Magomedsharipov gets a finish on the prelims, and Islam Mamedov debuts against former Bellator champion Brent Primus. Pretty close fight. I thought he deserved the win, but all these guys are just freaking ridiculous. They are so good.
Yeah, taken over exactly like you said, which is wise for them to get these guys. Let's see, Magomedsharipov is 6-0. Islam Mamedov, I'm surprised. Maybe Bellator gave him a better deal than what the UFC was going to offer because he had a good thing going, I thought, in the PFL / WSOF. So I don't know. Yeah, these guys are the future, as we've seen with other Russians here in Bellator.
I think you could make a really, really fun fight. Goiti Yamauchi wins on the main card opener. Man, you pair him with Islam Mamedov or Usman Nurmagomedov. I think both those fights could be very interesting because Yamauchi has a fun, free-flowing style that I think could pose problems for either one of those guys.
Fantastic grappler too, and Yamauchi was. He was at one point, I think before the pandemic, scheduled to fight Brent Primus. So him against Islam Mamedov, who just beat Brent Primus, I think would be a fight that makes sense.
Yeah, it would be super fun. Anything else you want to get off your chest on this Bellator card before we move on?
No, man, I think that's it. Just, I don't know what is their next. I know they announced some dates for the Grand Prix, but I guess they got another.
Well, it looks like
another event here in the next week or so.
Yeah, next weekend is back in Mohegan Sun. John Salter versus Gegard Mousasi. Co-main event between Sabah Homasi and Andrei Koreshkov. Oh, they also rebooked Magomedov and Rufian Stotts for that card, which is a big fight in the bantamweight division. Yeah,
no, I like what they're doing. It kind of like the UFC, Bellator comes and goes with good cards and not as good cards, but I definitely like that, like week in, week out, or whenever Bellator puts on a card, they're at least filled with like not eye roll fights that are compelling and relevant.
Yeah, I agree. Let me try to get the date for those. Because they did announce the Bader versus Corey Anderson and Vadim Nemkov versus Ryan Bader fight. Let me see. October 16th.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So, yeah, Nemkov, Rumble, title on the line in the main event. Corey Anderson, Ryan Bader, co-main event. That's going to be a big card.
Yeah, Lima MVP 2 coming up soon in London. There's a fight in that 265 Bellator card, which is in just a few weeks, is in fucking Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
Second only to Thackerville, Oklahoma.
Yeah. They don't have any dates booked in Thackerville right now, which is weird.
They've just been in Mohegan for the last year. It's great. Too bad you can't go.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the UFC card that happened this weekend. Thin card, but at the top, very important fight in the middleweight division. Man, Sean Strickland made me a believer after this fight. Not saying I wasn't a believer before, but I didn't really know where he was. I think this was a great test for him. Dude, he picked apart Urijah Hall for 5 rounds. Props to Urijah Hall for sticking in there, but I thought Strickland showed the full package. His jab was on point. He got takedowns when he needed to. He busted Urijah Hall up. Gets a huge win for him. That was, 5 in a row now?
Mm-hmm.
So he set himself up for a huge fight in this middleweight division.
Yeah, I thought Sean Strickland executed a very smart game plan here, which is like pressure, pressure, pressure. Like, don't let Urijah Hall set up his kicks. Don't even let Urijah Hall kick to begin with. I was surprised that Strickland was able to out jab Hall, because I thought Urijah Hall's jab, especially lately, had looked really good. But just like meat and potatoes, forward pressure boxing, and like you said, takedowns when he needs it. Basically took away Hall's best offensive weapons. It is disappointing, man. I feel like Urijah Hall throughout his career has been plagued with like a total lack of urgency when guys are finding success against him. I don't know if it's because he's so tough or he's sparred so much that he doesn't feel like, oh shit, this guy just hit me, I should like really change things up. But I thought lack of urgency from Hall, but he showed his grit, I think, staying in there. I don't know. Let me look at these rankings. I hadn't figured out. Usually I try to think ahead what is next for these guys. Sean Strickland moves up 3 spots, and he's now ranked number 8 in that division. I feel like it's hard for him to find a fight ahead of him in the rankings. Maybe.
Well, apparently he was offered, I don't know if you heard this, but they apparently,
I did.
as of right now, they've offered him Luke Rockhold. I mean, do you have any interest in that fight, returning Luke Rockhold to middleweight?
Of course. I like watching Luke Rockhold fight. It sounds like, didn't Rockhold say, just call him a dipshit or something? Like, I don't think.
Something like that, yeah.
I get the sense that Rockhold might not take that fight, but that also shows you what the UFC thinks of Luke Rockhold back at middleweight, is they want to give him a guy like Sean Strickland. Not a huge name, but obviously a really dangerous fight.
Sean Strickland's on a roll though, man, and he's got like that fun personality. I think you brought up a good point. I think if you look at the rankings and the way that everything's paired up right now, I think that he's not going to get a fight with the top 5 yet. He's not going to get a Jared Cannonier fight. I think Luke Rockhold, former champion, is a big enough name. I think that'd be an interesting one. I think the fight would be interesting. And for Luke Rockhold, man, a guy on a 5-fight winning streak, ranked 8th, if Luke Rockhold can come in and beat a guy like Sean Strickland, I think he inserts himself right back into the thick of that division.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's win-win for both guys. If not win-win, I should say, but that's a good opportunity for both guys, I should say. Style-wise, man, Strickland is with that pressure, I feel like he's such a terrible matchup for Rockhold. Not to say Rockhold can't win that fight, but he might be questioning whether or not he wants to take that fight, because he saw what Sean Strickland can do to a guy who has a great kicking game and not phenomenal boxing defense, which is kind of what Luke Rockhold is.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really tough fight for Rockhold. We'll see if they actually announce it. I mean, we could just quickly run down this card. Cheyenne Bays, man, talk about a beautiful knockout in the co-main event. It's crazy that Cheyenne Bays even made the co-main event. I mean, this fight, I think, started out with like 15. I mean, this card started out with like 15 fights and dropped down to 9 by fight time, which is crazy. Insane. Anyone else you want to shout out on this card? A lot of fun fights.
I liked the Grutzmacher Rafa Garcia fight. I thought was a fun.
Fight, yeah.
I thought Jason Witt put on a pretty impressive performance, like kind of outgutting Brian Barberena. Kind of announced himself as legitimate UFC fighter. Other than that, I mean, this was a pretty thin card, which I think people were saying this felt like Bellator prelims this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other big news story from this card, Nico Montano, inaugural women's flyweight champion, misses weight, comes in at 143 pounds, and is subsequently cut from the UFC. Talk about a fall from grace, man. Wins the title, and then fights one time, has about 7 pullouts, and now she's cut from the UFC. Not a good look for Nico.
Yeah, really, really rough, especially moving forward. I don't feel like any promotion. I know Campbell McLaren, the CEO of Combate Global, I think that's what they are now, flat out already said, like, we're not interested in Nico Montano. And if they're not, it's hard for me to think somebody like Bellator is interested, maybe a one, but even then, like, I feel like she kind of has this mark on her, and for good reason. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes people I
agreed.
think are too hard on Nico Montano, but at what point can we say this is this is bad? She's missed weight for a bantamweight fight by 8 fucking pounds. Like, at, not medically cleared. I'm looking down her Tapology. So
Dude,
missed
it's
weight,
ugly.
not medically cleared. Montano withdrew. Montano tested positive for COVID. Can't blame her on that.
On that one.
COVID reschedule. Montano injured. What else? One, her opponent got injured. I don't know. It's maybe like she can't be making very much money, if at all, from fighting right now, right? Like she
No,
hasn't
she hasn't
competed
fought.
since 2019. Maybe it might be time to call it quits for her if she can't get relevant fights elsewhere.
When did she win that title? That was in
2017,
and
December
she's fought
2017.
one time since then, a loss of Juliana Pena with all these. Yeah, I mean, maybe it is time to look in the mirror and think about, you know,
Or
calling
like,
quits or fighting Paige Van Zandt in bare knuckle fighting.
ooh, I could see that. I mean, honestly, I was gonna say like fucking
Bare knuckle's
just go
gonna
up
pick
to
it up.
like
They don't get.
I could see her going up to 145
I
and
feel like
signing
she's
with a
not that big of a
PFL.
girl though.
She's not she was a fucking flyweight champion. I don't
No,
understand why she's
no,
why she's coming in at 143 for bantamweight fights.
I have no idea. And 143 is not like a miss. 143 is a flat out like, yeah, I didn't really try. I'm not gonna say it flat out she didn't try, but that's not a miss. That's
Something
bare
went wrong.
overweight. Yeah,
Yeah, something went wrong a while ago for her to miss by that much.
I know. We'll see. Unfortunate stuff for Nico Montano. Hey man, we got a pay-per-view this coming weekend.
We do.
UFC 265, Houston, Texas. One of the worst interim title fights, not fights, but booking of an interim title that we've seen. The fight is awesome, right? The fight should be great, but interim title on the line, we can say what we want about it. But man, looking down at this card, this is a pretty solid card. There's a lot of fun fights on it. Starting at the top, Derrick Lewis taking on Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight title. We've bashed this being an interim title fight enough. Let's talk about the actual fight. Cyril Gane, 9-0 now? Said it before, man. I got a chance to preview his debut on the prelim primer with Dana Vreeland, and now he's all the way in the main event fighting Derrick Lewis for an interim title. It's one of the fights, man. I feel like the card is not getting much buzz whatsoever, but it is happening. What are your thoughts on the fight?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we won't need to talk about the booking too much, but yeah, it's falling way under the radar. I think for good reason, right? Because it's like silly that this is an interim title fight in a pay-per-view. The fight in general, though, like there's a small chance, I would say a non-zero chance that this could be really, really, really boring.
I think there's a better than a small chance. This could be very,
Yeah.
very boring.
Because Derrick Lewis, I'm literally working on an article right now about how he could win this fight. But he does his best work generally in like small. He doesn't do elaborate setups. He doesn't have elaborate footwork. He hardly feints at all. He hardly jabs at all. Derrick Lewis does his best work when he can get his opponent standing directly in front of him, like period. That's it. And he either does that from putting his opponent against the fence, like pressuring, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that to Cyril Gane here, because Gane is, at least through the first 2-3 rounds, Gane is going to be like way too fleet of foot, right? He moves really, really, really well for a heavyweight. So I don't think Derrick Lewis is going to be able to successfully pressure him. I do think what Lewis will try to do is back himself into the fence, And he kind of stands there looking super unthreatening, right? Standing straight up. Because he's just waiting for somebody to commit to an attack, at which point he'll throw like almost always a big right hand. And I think that's what he's going to try to do against Cyril Gane here. The problem is, like we've seen throughout Cyril Gane's UFC career, like he is patient and measured, and he is not going to be reckless on the feet. And I think there's a strong chance that this is Cyril Gane realizing he could land leg kicks and like front kicks and the occasional jab, basically without worrying about anything coming back. Like as long as he doesn't commit hard to an attack, Derrick Lewis isn't going to try to throw a counter, or he's for sure not going to land a counter. So I think there's a chance that is just Cyril Gane, like, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Picking apart Derrick Lewis from the outside with kind of just getting by with what he needs to do, landing 10 to 15 strikes around, and that could be enough, because we've seen Derrick Lewis be fine with landing or throwing fewer than like 5 strikes around.
Yeah, Derrick Lewis, especially later in his career, has become much more patient, picking his shots a lot better, kind of playing possum at points, right?
Yes.
And I just think that Cyril Gane he's a high IQ fighter, right? He's very good, like you said, he's fleet of foot, moves very well, has a great jab, picks his shots really well. I think a lot of this fight could be a staring contest, right? With neither guy throwing too much, Lewis not being able to hit Gane. I wonder if Gane is going to try to mix in any takedowns, because Gane has shown that he has a pretty solid ground game. I mean, he's got a heel hook finish in the UFC. He's got another submission in the UFC in his debut. I don't know, man. It seems like Gane has just about every advantage in this fight, but I'm picking Derrick Lewis. I think Derrick Lewis knocks Cyril Gane out in the 4th round of a fight that he's losing just about every minute of. But, man, Derrick Lewis is one of those guys that he can be losing the whole fight. He could be tired, but his power carries from the first minute of the fight to the last minute of the fight.
Yeah, I think something else. First of all, one thing, I do think Gane will try for at least one takedown here, because Derrick Lewis does not defend takedowns well, like at all. I do think if Derrick Lewis gets a finish here, I 100% think it comes late, like 4th round, 5th round. Yeah. His style, he fights so like low pace, Derrick Lewis, that even though he doesn't, like, he looks like he doesn't have great cardio, and he might not actually have great cardio. And I don't think he actually has great cardio, because when Derrick Lewis fights in bursts, he gets fucking exhausted.
Yes.
But he has all these like 3rd round and late round knockouts because he fights so slowly. So you could, and on top of that, I think because he's so big and durable, that he is exhausting to fight, right? So we could have a situation, if Derrick Lewis wins a 4th round knockout, like you said, I think we could have a situation where through the first 3 rounds, Cyril Gane is basically like landing pot shots at will.
That's what I expect, yes.
On Derrick Lewis. But because Derrick Lewis is so fucking big and so durable, Cyril Gane gets tired, right? He is draining his energy bar way quicker than he needs to. And then in the 4th round, Derrick Lewis decides, now's the time. Now I got him tired. Now I got him slower. Now I'm going to finally like unleash one of the like 20 total punches I plan to throw in this fight. So I don't think what you did, like a 4th round knockout, is not out of the question. I don't think he is crazy. People, and I assume Rogan's going to be calling this. People always act like it's fucking crazy that Derrick Lewis gets late stoppages, or they act like it's crazy that Derrick Lewis is throwing head kicks. If you've seen a Derrick Lewis fight, he throws head kicks a lot. You also know that he fights really slow because he likes waiting for his opponents to get tired and then let's go. Man, all that, I'm still going with Cyril Gane. I think he wins a decision, or even an early stoppage if he's able to get a takedown and like just unload with ground and pound, because I think he has just like insane athleticism. But I think I'm going Gane by like disappointing decision, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's exciting, because when we all know when Derrick Lewis decides to throw, if he has a willing counterpart, like it is bananas when he exchanges with people.
Yeah. Cyril Gane is right around a -350 favorite. 380, 375. That's a little bit steep. But dude, I gotta say, man, if Cyril Gane does win this fight, Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane is probably one of the most intriguing, I would think, heavyweight fights in a long while. I think Cyril Gane's just the way he strikes and his patience. I think can give Francis Ngannou a lot of problems. I think this fight is going to be, if he does win, a big test on how his chin would hold up against a guy like Francis Ngannou, because I would imagine Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou, although they don't strike exactly the same, probably have relatively similar power. I mean, both guys can hit extremely hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And if Gane wins here, do him against Ngannou in like Paris. I would love that. I mean, how crazy is it that we have two? I know Ngannou is Cameroonian technically, but also, you know, he speaks French, learned to fight in France, like two heavyweight French MMA fighters here.
Yeah. Agreed. Co-main event, Jose Aldo taking on Pedro Munoz. Absolute banger. You know what's crazy too? Pedro Munoz and Jose Aldo are the same age. It's crazy that Jose Aldo is still only 34 years old. I mean, the guy has just been around forever at the highest level. Yeah, these guys both have the same, very close to the same birthday, right before mine. Pedro Munoz, September 7th. Jose Aldo, September 9th. That's another fact for you. Yeah, really, really interesting fight. Pedro Munoz, a guy that always brings it, always in exciting fights. Brings a lot of power. The X factor for me is if Pedro Munoz tries to take this fight to the ground. Munoz has an excellent ground game, really good front head series, great guillotines. I do think on the feet, he may be a little bit behind Jose Aldo, especially at 35. His striking is just so fucking polished. And Jose Aldo, especially if he starts eating away at Pedro Munoz's legs, I think regardless, this fight is going to be bananas.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I like Aldo here, especially because it's a 3-round fight. Less pacing involved. I think he can get after Munoz pretty early. Part of what makes this fight a fucking banger is that Munoz is not, I don't think, going to be afraid to exchange. Right? I think of Munoz exchanging.
I don't think so. Yeah, he's
with
not
Cody Garbrandt. I think of him exchanging with everybody. So I think they will go. If Munoz gets it to the ground, it's a different story. It's hard for me to see him getting it there, at least with any level of consistency, especially in a 3-round fight. Like I said, I think Aldo worries way less about pacing himself and gassing, for good reason, in a 3-round fight. I don't think this will be a staring match. I think Aldo sometimes can be pretty passive. I don't think Munoz is going to let that happen, though.
Yeah, Munoz is not going to let that happen. I favor Aldo as well in a very close but extremely fun fight.
Yeah, for sure.
Favorite fight of the weekend, hands down. One of my favorite fights in recent history. Michael Chiesa taking on Vicente Luque in a huge welterweight fight. Obviously, there's a jam-packed division at the top of welterweight, but I think a win here positions either one of these guys, especially if it's an impressive win, maybe not next for the title, but definitely one fight away. Vicente Luque is just a fucking hammer, one of the funnest styles around, and Michael Chiesa has looked excellent since his move up to welterweight. He's won he's won 4 in a row. Dominated Dos Anjos and Neil Magny in his past 2. The Neil Magny fight, it was especially impressive. His frame is huge for welterweight. And Vicente Luque, man, I mean, name me a boring Vicente Luque fight. Don't think it's ever happened. Vicente Luque's only 2 losses in recent memory, Leon Edwards and Stephen Thompson, both who are pretty damn good. Vicente Luque has a really good ground game that I don't think he shows enough. He's got good, good front chokes, good darces. I wonder if Chiesa is going to be able to mount any ground or sustained ground offense against Vicente Luque, because I think on the feet, he's going to be outgunned here.
Yeah, no, I think 100% that's the case. Chiesa is a little too reckless, not a little too, much too reckless, I think, and hittable on the feet. And I think you bring up the real turning point is those front chokes. Like, I think Chiesa, especially at 170, where I think he's a little bit more concerned about getting hit standing. He's a little bit more like willing to put himself out there to get the takedown. And I think I'm not saying Luque is gonna tap Chiesa with like a guillotine or an anaconda, but I think just the threat of those is really, really gonna give Chiesa issues. However, like when you think about Michael Chiesa's game, I think he's a grappler first, but he's not necessarily a grinder. He's more of like a back taker. And I think if he's able to get to the back just once or twice, like that obviously changes the real complexion of the fight. But Luque, I believe, is a black belt himself. Really, really good ground game himself. I don't think Chiesa can do a ground-based attack for long enough to win this fight. Maybe a round, but I think otherwise, I think Luque defends or threatens the front choke to defend takedowns, and then outboxes Chiesa on the feet.
Yeah, I'm with that too. I'll go one better. I think Luque actually finishes Chiesa here. Dude, he is just ferocious on the feet. He's got a great fucking gas tank too. He's tough as nails, and he does have a good ground game. So I think if he does get taken down, he's going to have the wherewithal to work himself back to the feet. And I think the longer it stays on the feet, the more he's going to wear down and chip away at Chiesa. So I do think he finishes him, but really, really excited for this one.
Honestly, it's kind of surprising. Chiesa's lost 4 times in his career, all by finish. So I think getting a finish here, and 3 come by way of submission. So I think Luque actually even getting a choke after maybe hurting Chiesa on the feet is not out of the question here at all.
Yeah, I can see him jumping on like a Darce or something, or an Anaconda, maybe even a guillotine. Should be fun, though. Moving down on the card, Tisha Torres, Angela Hill rematching. I believe these chicks have some beef, too. Don't they always like jawing at each other? I know this fight was rescheduled from a couple weeks ago, but the odds are like dead even, just about. Actually, Tisha Torres is a slight favorite, which I'm kind of surprised at. I kind of favor Angela Hill here. I think she's been on a roll as of late, although she hasn't always won. Her fights are always just ultra, ultra close.
Yeah, this fight has split decision written all over it. Like strawweight kickboxers, nobody knows.
No. The main card opener, Song Yadong taking on Casey Kenny. Song Yadong is very good, also has the best name going. I really, really like the prelim main event. Rafael Fazeev taking on Bobby Green. This is a great step up for Fazeev. Bobby Green is one of the stars of the pandemic, right? In the Apex. He had won 3 straight. He lost Thiago Moises in his last fight. But Bobby Green is a great test for Rafael Fazeev.
Yeah, people are super high on Fazeev for good reason. He's kind of a must-watch at this point. I even forget that he lost in the UFC. In my head, he's undefeated, but that's a like kickboxing dream. Like I think this is going to be a really, really fun fight for sure.
Yeah, it's a great fight. Crossroads fight for the women. Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Jessica Penne. Both former title challengers, both in need of a win. Actually, Penne came back and got a win in her last fight after. She had a rough go for the last couple of years. She was off for 4 years, suspensions, all that stuff. Karolina has had a very rough go about it, losing her last 4. Also really like, obviously, my guy Manel Cape. He's had a tough go so far in the UFC, but he's back in this card. We'll see if he can get a win.
Yeah, I thought Cape won his last fight, so I'm pretty excited. He lost technically a split decision to Nicolau, but yeah, I am real pumped. I feel like like you said, he's had a rough go. His UFC debut against Pantoja, I think he had a little bit of the octagon jitters, if that's a thing, or was a little nervous. I do think he won his last fight, which was a fun one, and I think hopefully he's kind of in the groove of things now, and people are going to see the realness. Manel Cape is only 27 years old, so we got time.
I know. I'm hoping he can get a win, because I do think he could be a player in this division.
Big time. No, I think he's got top 5, top 10 flyweight written all over him.
How about this? Ed Herman's on this card on a 3-fight win streak. Holy shit. Right? That's what I just said. I clicked on his record, and Ed Herman with a very quiet 3-fight win streak. Although the last fight was the one That was a nutshot gate, right? Where he got knocked out, but they called it a nutshot, and then he came back and Kimura and Mike Rodriguez.
I do remember that. Yeah, taking on Alonzo Menafield. Oh Jesus, Ed Herman might get knocked out here.
Yeah, he might get starched here. Menafield is built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
All right. You know what we do got to talk about before we get out of here? Dude, the UFC went on a fucking matchmaking spree the other day.
Yeah.
Let's shout some of these out. Obviously, the biggest one, in my opinion, the most obvious fight they had to make fight fans rejoice. Justin Gaethje taking on Michael Chandler. Thank God they made this fight. I mean, this is like the just bleed hardcore action fighter's dream. I mean, these guys are two of the best action fighters in recent memory.
Yeah, 100%, man. How can you not be pumped for basically every Justin Gaethje fight? But now you're, like you said, he's up against another action fighter. And I think if people are just getting to know Michael Chandler, they should be pumped. If you've only ever seen his 2 UFC fights, you know that he comes out guns fucking blazing, trying to knock you out as quickly as possible. I think Gaethje, I can't wait to break this fight down, but real quick, I think Gaethje's going to chew up Chandler's legs. I think Chandler's going to have a real good shot of taking Gaethje down if it goes later. I think it's going to be wild the first 5 minutes, though.
Someone is getting finished. I would put the odds of this fight, even though it's a 3-round fight, making all 3 at like negative 1,000. This fight is not going 3 rounds. I think Chandler early, Gaethje late is probably how I would put it. But man, someone's getting finished. It's going to be fucking awesome. It's good to finally see Justin Gaethje back. I mean, by the time they step into the ring, it's going to be over a year since he lost to Khabib.
I'm fine with that though, man. That guy needs, we've talked about it before, like the way he fights, he's even in victories other than James Vick, he takes tons of punishment. So I'm fine with having him get a little break in here. I think I'm excited to see him like at full strength. Same with Chandler. I mean, that loss to Oliveira was not an easy one for him either.
Yeah. Cody Garbrandt is going to be making his flyweight debut, taking on Kai Kara France. Maybe not the opponent that we had thought, but an interesting fight nonetheless.
He's going to be fucked if he starts bombing right hands. Kai Kara France will maybe knock him out too. Who knows? But I'm excited about it.
Too.
Yeah.
That should be a good one. Love this one as well. Marvin Vittori looks like he's going to be headlining October 23rd against Paulo Costa. Really good matchmaking. I think pre-fight banter will be really good. Both these guys like to talk shit. I think it'll be hilarious, and the fight in the cage is going to be probably bananas.
Dude, that's like meathead, like
Meathead
the most like Haas meathead. Both guys talk trash the same way, which is like meatheads. Both guys fight the same way, which is like meatheads.
Yes.
So if that's your thing, which I do, like I'm excited about this fight. It'll be fun. It'll be a dog fight while it lasts. I love it. 2 like super jacked, good looking guys who just are always angry.
Yeah, love the matchmaking. Yeah. Last one, I think, Islam Makhachev taking on Rafael dos Anjos, October 30th in Abu Dhabi. Like that matchmaking as well. It was a fight that was supposed to happen. It got canceled. RDA's looked good in his return at 55. I think that we've seen him struggle against wrestlers in the past, but he is a battle-tested guy. I mean, the guy has literally one of the most impressive resumes out there. He's fought just about everybody, so it is an interesting test for Islam.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Makhachev is getting a step up in competition. It's just sad because, like, we know how – I feel like we kind of know how this fight's going to go already just because we've seen RDA against wrestlers so much. But you know what, man? Who knows? I could be wrong. Former champion, like RDA is not going to go quietly into the night. It's just stylistically a really, really tough fight for him.
It is a very tough fight, but we saw him a lot against the monster wrestlers up at 70, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman. So, I mean, not saying Islam Makhachev is not a monster wrestler, but, at least he's not going to have an extra 15 pounds on him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Like I said, it's good that Makhachev gets a pretty clear step up in competition. But style wise, it's, whatever. I can't complain because it's like if he wins this fight, style matchups are out the window because he's fighting for titles and number one contender fights.
Yeah, agreed. Did we miss anything? I'm trying to look to see if there's any other fights or anything else that we skimmed over.
I think that's most of it. Yeah, I've been looking too. I mean, just all these fucking fight announcements. Soon we're gonna have to talk about Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. We'll have a couple weeks off here in August of UFC action, so we might be bringing some fun stuff. I think that's it though, man.
Have you been watching any of the Olympics?
Basically none. Not just basically, definitely none. Part of it is I was on vacation, but
yeah,
I don't know what's going on with the wrestling or even the boxing, the combat sports elements.
I haven't watched any boxing, but obviously I've been super tuned into wrestling. Men's freestyle wrestling just started last night. We have David Taylor actually wrestling for gold tomorrow at 86 kilos. Thomas Gilman is going to be wrestling for bronze at 57 kilos. Adeline Gray won a silver medal for the women. Tamara Mensah-Stock, who I think is possibly the best pound-for-pound wrestler in America, regardless of gender, won her first Olympic gold medal. So props to Tamara. She's a great human being, a great representative for the U.S. and the sport. Helen Maroulis also is going to be wrestling for bronze, former 2016 gold medalist. So
nice.
USA is doing big things.
USA.
Yeah, go USA.
Yeah, that's fucking cool. I should tune in for that David Taylor match. I mean, he's somebody I've been watching since he was in college, so I'm into that.
The bad thing is I guess actually it's kind of a benefit for me working third shift because I get to watch a lot of it. But they do the medal rounds at like between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. Eastern. So it's rough, man. I actually woke up at 5 a.m. to watch the fucking medal rounds this morning.
That's cool though.
You only get to do it every 4 years, so sacrifice a little sleep to watch the wrestlers go at it.
That's legit. Yeah.
Because it's not only the USA wrestlers. There's just so much good wrestling in all these countries that you get to watch. And a lot of these guys, man, they make the transition to MMA. A lot of these Russian guys, and you even see some of the Iranian studs come over. So
yeah, I should tune in more. Usually my wrestling watching is just like college wrestling and mostly just the national tournament, but you're right, man. I feel like every year we get UFC like hot prospects, not even in the UFC, just hot MMA prospects. And it's like, oh, this guy fought, or this guy was an Olympic silver medalist for Bulgaria or something. It's like, I've never heard of him. I should probably tune in.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's not too late. They are running another round tonight at 10 o'clock, so get to see some good stuff.
Right. I'm pumped.
These who's number one brackets are getting crazy too.
Oh my god.
Jiu-jitsu side of things, man. They're getting beefy.
It fell under the radar, but the women's 115 bracket,
yes, dude,
is going to be banging. Tammy Musumichi's coming back. I'm trying to see if I can't pull up the 185 bracket that has already started, but it's like
they announced,
Craig Jones, William Tackett, Tyro Tolo. Andrew Wiltsey, wild card. I have to imagine Wagner Hocha is going to be in there.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of other like who's number one mainstays, but dude, though it's a 2-day tournament in September, or a set of tournaments in September. And man, I'm if you're into jiu-jitsu, that is the time to like get in, because those are all the 8 best grapplers at like 5 weight classes, all in sub-only rule sets. I love it.
Also, shout out to the Emerald City Invitational happening this week in New Jersey. Their 145-pound bracket is fucking stacked.
Yeah,
so if
Kennedy
you got a full account,
Maciel,
check that shit out.
I definitely think that's worth tuning in for. I'm trying to think who else they got. Kennedy Maciel. I think Josh Cisneros is in it, maybe.
Damian Anderson's in it. Keith Krikorian's in it. Gianni Grippo's in it. There's a lot of freaking studs in it, man.
And their first event, this is only their second event, Emerald City, but their first event I thought went off without a hitch. It's all EBI rules, tournament, one-night tournament. And I think PJ Barch won their first tournament with like 4 submissions inside regulation. So if somebody has another performance like that, it's pretty fucking incredible. So yeah, that's phenomenal jiu-jitsu happening this weekend.
Yeah, man. Awesome stuff. We appreciate you guys listening. That's it for the show. Please hit us with a subscribe on YouTube. Follow us wherever you listen to the podcast. Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube. We're all over the place. Enjoy the fights. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Face the pain.